Hello everyone and welcome to the new Python video. Today I'm going to talk about lambdas in Python, and we're going to start off with lambdas definition and lambdas syntax, and later on we're going to play around with lambdas a bit. We're going to take a look at a few examples of where lambdas are used these days and so on. So without further ado, let's get down to it. As you can see on the screen, lambda is an expression form that generates function objects. And unlike functions created using the def keyword, we don't give a name to lambdas. And that's why they are very often called anonymous functions or unnamed functions. And when it comes to lambda syntax, we create a lambda expression using the lambda keyword, starting from the left. Then we define 0 or more arguments in our lambda expression. And once we're done with our arguments, we put the colon. After the colon, in lambda's body, we type our expression. And you can think of this expression as of what you would put in a normal function in its return statement. And actually, now that we have some theory behind us, let's hop into Spider IDE and let's create a simple lambda expression. So as stated already, we're going to start with our lambda keyword. And now we have this option to define our arguments. So it's perfectly fine to define default values in lambda's argument. So I'm going to assign this 10 integer to x argument. And once I'm done with my arguments, I'm going to put a colon here. And inside lambda's body, I'm going to write our expression. So I'm going to say x divided by 2. So this is going to be our expression, a very contrived example. So basically, whatever argument we pass into our lambda expression, it will be divided by 2. All right, so now that we have it, let's hit the return key and see what we get. We've mentioned that lambdas return a function object, and that's exactly what we got here. Since this is an object, we can assign it to a variable. So what we can do here is assign this to a variable. Let's call it something, and equals our expression. And we can then call this function by its name and pass in an argument to this function. So let's see how that works. And we can pass whatever here, and it worked perfectly fine. So this works like a normal function. And in fact, lambdas are very similar to normal functions, except for the fact that they don't have a name. It's not obligatory to define a name for lambda. And obviously, there are some advantages and disadvantages for having lambda. And the advantage would be that we can put lambdas in places where def is not allowed by Python syntax. Very often we are using lambda, we use lambda to define inline callback functions or to put our lambda expression as an argument to higher order functions. And unfortunately, since lambda is an expression, we cannot put statements in lambda's body. So we cannot use things like if statements or loops. All right, so now that we have this theory part behind us, let me clear the screen and we're going to take a look at Tkinter and the use of lambda in Tkinter module. And Tkinter is a built-in Python GUI API for creating for creating user interfaces. So I'm going to write our code here on the left in the script file. So first of all, I'm going to import Tkinter, and if you're not familiar with Tkinter, don't worry. I just want to show you how lambdas might come in handy when we are working with Tkinter. All right, so I'm going to create our main widget here. So this is going to be our main window. I'm going to call it master, and I'm going to use the tk method here and tk class. All right. And now let's set some title for this master window. We're going to call it learning lambda, and we're going to set some size as well. And this is called, I believe, geometry. That's right. And let's put it 400x. And let's define some more grid options, grid column configure, and we're gonna set this to 0 and this option here, keyword argument weight to 1. So our button then that we are gonna create in a second will be positioned correctly and adjusted correctly. Okay, so now that we have it, this is our main window. We'll create just a small button in this main widget, and we will see how we can use lambdas in this button object to trigger an event or to call a function only when the event occurs. So to create a button with the Tkinter, we can use this button class. So I'm going to use button class, and we're going to put it on master widget, and we're going to call it click me. And one more thing, there is this command keyword argument that we will use in a bit. All right, so now that we have it, let's leave this blank for a second, and we're gonna define grid options as well here. So we want it to be in the first row. All right, so one more thing to add, and this is main loop method for our main widget, so that we can see our app displayed. All right, so this command keyword argument takes in a function or method as an argument. So let's first define a normal function using the def keyword that will just print some text string. So I'm going to call it print something, just to illustrate what is the difference between normal functions and Lambda. And we'll define one parameter here, and this passed in parameter will be basically displayed to the console when we call this function inside our button widget. All right, so now that we have it, we can, oops, let me revert this. We can pass in this function to our command keyword argument, and let's put here some string. So let's call this learning lambda. Let's stick to this, and now that we have it, I think we're ready to go. So I'm going to hit the play button, and I'm going to drag this window here since it was on the second screen, and you can see that we have this main widget and we have our click me button. But take a look at the interactive console here on the right. We can see that our text string has been printed to the console immediately, even if we didn't press the click me button. And our goal here is for the string to be printed only when we press the button. So with Lambda, we can defer execution of the code until the event occurs. And when we provide normal functions like this with parentheses, we are basically calling this function out even before our button widget gets created. So that's why we see this string printed to the console immediately. So what we can do here to prevent this and to defer execution of the code, as I said, let me close this, and we can add here this lambda keyword and put the colon, and lambda will serve as a kind of interface between Tkinter and our function. So now if we rerun this, let me drag this again, and you can see that nothing has been printed to the console yet. And when we click the button here, our string is being printed. So that's the main advantage of using Lambda here, and that's where they might come in handy with Tkinter. And generally, Lambdas are most useful as a shorthand for dev when we have to embed small pieces of executable code in places where dev is not allowed by Python syntax. All right, so let me exit out of this, and now we're gonna switch to Pandas. And Pandas is a very popular open source data analysis tool, and we're going to take a look how we can employ Lambdas in Pandas library. All right, so to use Pandas, we need some data structure. And generally, if you're not familiar with Pandas, don't worry. we'll basically create a dictionary, simple dictionary, and read this dictionary to Pandas data frame object, so we can have some data set to work on. So I'm going to first of all, I'm going to create a dictionary here. I'm going to call it mydict, and let's put some our key will be called names, and we are going to put some names to our dictionary: Joe, Mike, Otto. All right, and the second key will be called ages, and this is gonna be a list of some ages basically. So let's put some random values here, and now that we have our dictionary, we can import our pandas library. Okay, so I'm gonna extend it a bit so it's more visible. All right, so I'm going to import pandas as PD. It's a common convention to import it as PD as a shorthand, and we can read in this dictionary to our data frame object. So df equals PD data frame method, and we're gonna pass in here our dictionary mydict. And as you can see here, we have our data frame, and data frame, it's enough to know that a data frame is two-dimensional data structure, and in Pandas we have something called series, and series would be equivalent to the column, and series are a one-dimensional data structure. All right, so now that we have it, let's see how we can employ lambdas in Pandas. All right, so for example, there is this apply map method that allows us to apply a function on each element in our data frame. And if we open this parentheses, you can see that apply map function or method applies a function to a data frame element wise. So what we can put here is a lambda expression, for example. All right, so let's write some simple lambda expression. Let's say that we want to get the length of each element in our data frame. So what we can do here, remember, we start our lambda expression with lambda keyword, and then we put our argument. And in our case, this x argument will refer to each element in our data frame. All right, so since we want to get the length of each item in our data frame, what we want to do is to use the len function, but before we can use it on each element, we need to convert these elements to strings. All right, so since these are integers, we need to convert them to strings, and we can cast them to strings using str function. All right, and here we are passing our argument. All right, so one more parenthesis to close this here, and we are ready to go. Let's run this and see what we got. So it worked perfectly fine. We got the length for each item in our data frame, and let's take a look at a few more examples here. Let's say, for example, that you want, I don't know why you would do that, but again, we are working on very contrived examples. Let's say that we want to reverse the names that we have here in our data frame. So what we can do here on a series, and to access a series in Pandas, you access them like you would access dictionary keys. So we use this square bracket notation, and we put here the name of our key, the name of our series in our case, and we have this apply method as well, and this apply method takes in a function as an argument as well. So again, we can define our lambda expression here, and we start off with our lambda keyword and with our argument, and to reverse a value in Python, we can simply use slicing. So we can use this slicing here, and at the end we can use this minus a negative index. We close our square brackets and we close our parentheses, and we got our names reversed basically. And we can see that we have even one palindrome here. All right. So basically, that's it. Maybe we can take a look at one more example here, because really it comes down to one's creativity, how you will use Lambda in Pandas, and there's a plenty of options to use them in plenty of places. So let's see how we can do it on another example. Okay, so let's say that we want to use this log property, and it allows us, log property allows us to access groups of rows and columns by labels or by Boolean arrays. So what we can put here inside this log property is a lambda expression. So again, we are starting with our lambda keyword, and this time let's call this argument the f. And in our expression, in the body of our lambda expression, we're going to put the ages series. And let's say that we want to access only the values where ages is greater than 18. All right, so what we can do here is simply put a greater than sign, and we close our square brackets and we hit the enter key. So as you can see, we got back our results here with 23 and 54, and 12 was missed, was skipped. So that's how we can use Lambda, and these days it's very often used in Pandas, so it's good to know it. And if you are working with Pandas, for sure you will encounter Lambda as well. And that's it for today. If you've liked this video, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. And if you have any comments or questions, let me know in the comment section. And take care. Thank you once again for watching, and bye bye.